The Art of Seeing Without Your Eyes. The Vision of Creative Visualization. A work created by Oscar Gonzalez for Biblio Studio. Chapter 1. The Invisible Door. Discovering the Power of Imagination. When you close your eyes, the world doesn't disappear, it transforms. The external contours fade, but within you arises a vibrant space, filled with colors, voices, and shapes. That inner space, which we usually call imagination, is much more than a mental pastime. It is a true, invisible door to creation. Many believe that visualization is simply daydreaming. However, there is a fundamental difference between getting lost in fantasies and using the mind as a conscious laboratory. Creative visualization is precisely that deliberate act of building with images what we want to experience in reality. It is looking with closed eyes and discovering that inner sight has a much wider reach than the physical sense. The paradox of seeing without looking. It is curious. Throughout history, humanity has trusted more in what is seen outside than in what happens within. Our ancestors, however, already intuited that the invisible pulled the strings of the visible. In Paleolithic caves, the first humans painted animals on walls and then threw spears at the figures. For them, it was not art, but practical magic. By representing the hunt, they increased their chances of real success. Today we know, thanks to neuroscience, that the brain does not clearly distinguish between something vividly imagined and something actually experienced. When you close your eyes and imagine yourself running, the same brain areas that light up during physical running also activate in your inner simulation. That means every time you visualize, you are training your mind and body to act. To see without eyes is then a silent training. A practice where each image becomes a seed. In 1944, during World War II, British pilot James Stockdale was taken prisoner in a Japanese camp. He spent more than 7 years locked away, unable to practice his favorite sport, golf. To keep from losing his sanity, every day he played 18 holes. In his mind, he imagined the entire course, the wind, the feel of the grass, even the weight of the club in his hands. When he was finally freed and returned to the fields, he surprised everyone. His game had improved. He had trained without moving. It was not magic, but visualization. Stockdale had turned his confinement into an inner gym. His story is a reminder that the power of imagination is not escapism. It is preparation. The art of building worlds. You might think, yes, but I'm not a pilot or a professional athlete. And you are right. But creative visualization is not reserved for athletes or artists. It is a universal ability. Every person builds inner worlds daily. Have you ever worried so much about a situation that you replayed it 100 times in your mind before it even happened? That too is visualization. Only instead of creating a solution, you are reinforcing a fear. The same happens when you recall an argument and mentally respond better than you did in reality. Your brain doesn't know whether it was real or not. It simply records that experience as rehearsal. The question is not whether you visualize or not, but what kind of images you feed inside yourself. First exercise. A glimpse at your private cinema. Let me suggest something simple. Tonight, before going to sleep, try the following experiment. 1. Sit in a quiet place with your back straight. 2. Close your eyes and recall a very ordinary object, such as your favorite mug. 3. Try to visualize it in detail, its color, texture, even the sound it makes when set on the table. 4. Hold that image for a few seconds and observe how your mind tries to complete it. This small exercise is revealing because it shows you the quality of your inner screen. You may discover that your mug appears blurry or that your mind quickly gets distracted. That is normal. Most people have never trained this capacity. But like muscles, imagination strengthens with practice. The bridge between emotion and image. Visualization is not just creating a mental picture. For it to work, emotion must accompany the image. The emotional brain, the amygdala and other limbic structures, responds to the intensity of what you feel. If you imagine a scenario without emotion, it remains a simple drawing. If you live it with enthusiasm, fear, or desire, it is recorded as a real experience. In this, children have the advantage. They play at being astronauts, heroes, or animals, and they feel it so truly that their bodies respond. They sweat, laugh, tremble. As we grow up, we dim that spark under the excuse of realism. But misunderstood realism becomes limitation. The challenge of this first chapter is simple: to recover the ability to feel what you imagine. In the 19th century, French painter Henri Rousseau, a customs officer with no formal training, began painting lush jungles filled with wild animals. He had never left Paris. His source was imagination, nourished by visits to the zoo and illustrated books. His paintings, though technically naive, conveyed such strength that they influenced great artists like Picasso. Rousseau saw jungles without seeing them. He created an inner world that became universal. His example reminds us of something essential. We do not need extraordinary experiences to imagine. It is enough to open the invisible door. Chapter 2. The Inner Laboratory: How Science Supports Imagination. When you hear the word imagination, you might associate it with a child's game, a fleeting daydream, or at best, an artistic inspiration. But if we look at what contemporary science tells us, imagination is much more. It is an inner laboratory capable of modifying the brain, transforming the body, and altering the way we experience the world. In this chapter, we enter fascinating territory: how neuroscience, psychology, and even medicine have discovered that visualization is not a superficial act, but a profound mechanism with measurable consequences in physical reality. The brain as a simulator. Neuroscientist Stephen Koslin at Harvard University carried out pioneering experiments in the 1980s and 1990s that demonstrated something extraordinary. When a person imagines an object, the same brain areas activate as if they were actually seeing it. If you imagine a huge letter and then a small one, your visual cortex responds with patterns similar to those it would display when seeing real letters of different sizes. In other words, your brain doesn't just think in images, it actually sees them internally. Imagination is literally perception without external stimulus. This discovery changed the way we understand the mind. Visualization is training the brain in a safe environment, a kind of flight simulator where you can practice without risk, but with real effects. The experiment of the invisible weights. In 1992, psychologist Guang Yue conducted a surprising study. He divided a group of volunteers into two. One group had to physically exercise their fingers with weights, while the other had to simply imagine doing so. After several weeks, those who trained physically increased their strength by 30%. The striking fact was that the group who only imagined it also gained strength by 22%. Without moving a muscle, their bodies had changed. This experiment is rarely mentioned in training manuals because it seems to defy logic, but it confirms something crucial. The mind can modify the body through visualization. It is not only strength that responds to imagination. Medicine has also documented cases of patients improving their health through visualization. One of the most peculiar occurred in the 1970s with asthma patients. By imagining that they were inhaling a bronchodilator, some experienced real relief in their airways, even though they were only receiving a placebo. This phenomenon does not mean that visualization replaces medicine, but it reveals the enormous capacity of the brain to influence physiological processes. Your body listens to the stories you tell it with images. In 1912, a Hungarian chess player named Richard Reti, confined to a hospital with a long illness, began playing entire games in his mind, without a board. He imagined every move, every piece, every possible response from his opponent. He spent months in that invisible training. When he recovered, he returned to competition and became one of the great masters of the era, famous for his innovative style. The paradox is that his best training happened in bed, in silence, within a mental chessboard no one else could see. Reti demonstrated something that scientists would confirm decades later. The brain can refine complex skills through imagined practice. The 10% myth. You've probably heard the phrase, "We only use 10% of our brain." It's a popular myth, but like many myths, it carries a seed of truth. It is not that 90% of our brain is inactive. All areas have functions. But the truth is, we use in a limited way our ability to connect them with each other. Visualization is one of the bridges that integrates different zones: the visual cortex, the limbic system, the motor cortex, even the cerebellum. When you imagine, you are not working with an isolated fragment of the brain. You are creating an active network that coordinates emotion, perception, and movement. That integration is what produces real change. Exercise, the invisible rehearsal. Here is a simple exercise inspired by professional musicians who use visualization as training. 1. Choose an everyday action you know well, such as making coffee. 2. Close your eyes and imagine the process step by step, feeling the cup, hearing the water boil, smelling the aroma. 3. Do it slowly, as if it were a movie. 4. When finished, compare your sensation with the real action. Do you notice that your body already knows what to do? This invisible rehearsal can be applied to any skill. Giving a speech, playing an instrument, facing a difficult conversation. The key is to repeat it in detail, activating both images and emotions. The power of the impossible. Science has not only confirmed that visualization works, it has also discovered that its power increases when we imagine seemingly impossible things. A study at the University of Chicago showed that basketball players who mentally practiced impossible shots, like scoring from strange angles, improved more than those who only practiced the usual ones. Why? Because the brain, when facing the improbable, develops greater flexibility and creativity. Visualization is not repeating the obvious. It is expanding the field of the possible. In Sufi tradition, there is a story of a blind blacksmith who forged perfect swords. When asked how he managed without seeing the metal, he replied, "I first forge the sword within. When my hands touch it, it is already finished." Although this story may sound legendary, it aptly illustrates what science confirms. External work begins in the invisible workshop of the mind, a laboratory within everyone's reach. Imagine that inside you there is a laboratory open 24 hours, at no cost, with no need for permits. There you can rehearse, test, make mistakes, and improve. That laboratory is your visualization. It is not about replacing real action, but complementing it. The pianist who practices with fingers on the keyboard and the one who practices by imagining both train different circuits. Together, they produce superior performance. The same applies to any area of life. the student who mentally reviews an exam, the speaker who imagines standing before an audience, the person who visualizes staying calm in the middle of an argument. The inner laboratory is always available. The question is whether you use it or leave it empty. Chapter 3: Cartographers of Desire. Designing the life we want. Imagine for a moment that your life is a vast territory full of rivers, mountains, and paths yet to be explored. Many walk through that territory without a map, letting themselves be carried by chance or by the footprints of others. But there are those who choose to become cartographers of their own desire. They draw routes, sketch horizons, and dare to project their destination before walking the path. Creative visualization begins here, in the art of clearly designing what we long for. Without an inner map, our imagination can scatter in 1,000 directions, creating confusion instead of results. That is why this chapter is an invitation to take pen and paper, even if only symbolically, and begin to chart your inner world. Dreaming is not the same as visualizing. We all daydream. We think about what it would be like to live somewhere else, to have a different job, or to enjoy more fulfilling relationships. But dreaming and visualizing are not the same. A dream is vague. It appears and vanishes like a cloud. Visualization, on the other hand, is precise. It involves giving shape, color, and emotion to a longing. Dreaming is saying, "I would like to be happy." Visualizing is seeing yourself on a Sunday morning in a bright house, surrounded by people with whom you share sincere laughter, feeling peace in your body. The shift from the abstract to the concrete is what turns desire into a map, a case from the skies. In 1937, a young Brazilian engineer named Alberto Santos Dumont suffered from insomnia. To distract himself, he began to draw, from memory, every detail of a flying device he had imagined. Day after day, his notebook filled with increasingly vivid sketches. Years later, those drawings became the foundation of his prototypes for dirigibles and light airplanes. The curious thing is that Dumont did not begin with a technical plan, but with repeated images in his mind. His notebook was, in reality, a map of visualizations. What started as a nocturnal pastime ended up changing the history of aviation. The most common error: not knowing what we want. One reason why visualization often seems to not work is that most people don't know exactly what they want. We ask for abundance, but we don't define what it means for us: money, time, peace of mind. We want success, but we don't clarify in which field or for what purpose. The unconscious works with clear images. Asking, "I want freedom," is like handing the brain a compass without a north. It needs precise signals: freedom to travel, to choose your schedule, to express yourself without fear. The first task of the cartographer of desire is to define in detail what they want to experience. Exercise: the map of longings. Here is a simple exercise to begin designing your map. 1. Wish list. Write down 3 things you deeply long for. Don't limit yourself. 2. Define the scene. For each desire, imagine a specific moment where that longing is already real. If you want a new job, visualize yourself entering your dream office, greeting colleagues, feeling satisfaction. 3. Detail the senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel in your body? 4. Name the map. Give it a brief positive title such as My Abundant Life or Fulfilling Work 2025. By doing this, you turn an abstract cloud into a living scenario, and a living scenario is much easier to remember and reinforce. The power of metaphor. Ancient navigators drew monsters on the edges of maps to mark the unknown. We too have monsters, fears and doubts that darken our desires. The advantage of visualization is that we can replace those monsters with luminous symbols. For example, if you visualize your goal as a train journey, each station can symbolize a step achieved. If you imagine it as a tree, each branch can represent an area of your life that is flourishing. The brain responds well to metaphors because they activate multiple areas at the same time: emotion, memory, and imagination. It is said that in the 15th century, painter Fra Angelico, before painting his religious frescoes, spent hours in front of a blank wall. He wasn't idle for lack of ideas, but because he practiced a particular technique, he imagined the finished work, with every color and every gesture. Only when the image was completely formed within him did he take up his brushes. Legend says this is why his frescoes convey such serenity, because they were painted twice, first in the mind and then on the wall. From confusion to clarity. Visualizing with precision does not mean you must know exactly how everything will happen. The how belongs to life, to the flow of circumstances we cannot control. What matters is the what and how it feels. An example. Someone who says, "I want a red sports car," may actually desire freedom, adventure, and recognition. The car is a symbol, but the feeling is the compass. If life grants freedom in the form of travel or a new job that allows mobility, the desire is still fulfilled. The map is not a prison. It is a flexible guide that points the way. Exercise. The cartographer's journal. Another powerful tool is keeping a visualization journal. Each day, spend a few minutes writing what you saw in your practice. Describe the scene as if it had already happened. Include sensory details, smells, colors, sounds. Also, note the emotions you felt. Over time, this journal becomes your personal atlas. When rereading it, you will see patterns, recurring symbols, and clues about what your unconscious is truly seeking. In 1971, psychologist Gary Klein studied how firefighters made rapid decisions during fires. He discovered that they did not rationally analyze options, but visualized possible scenarios within seconds. If the roof collapses, we escape to the left. If the smoke changes, we retreat. This finding gave rise to the concept of pre-mortem, imagining failure before acting in order to anticipate solutions. Interestingly, the visualization of the worst-case scenario saved their lives. This reminds us that cartography is not always about painting sunny landscapes. It also involves foreseeing storms and preparing shelters, from map to action. Being a cartographer of desire does not mean remaining in contemplation. Once the map is designed, the first steps must be taken. Action, even if small, anchors visualization in the physical world. If you visualize learning a language, the minimal action is to download an app or buy a notebook. If you imagine a healthier life, the minimal action might be walking 5 minutes a day. The coherence between image and action creates a powerful circuit that reinforces desire. Chapter 4. The Secret Language of Images. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a red circle floating in the darkness. It is not a real object, but something within you reacts. The color might remind you of fire, danger, or a beating heart. Now imagine a blue lake. The feeling changes. Calm, depth, freshness. Why does this happen? Because images have their own language, one that speaks to our deepest mind. Creative visualization is not limited to reproducing everyday scenes. It works far more powerfully when we understand how symbols and archetypes communicate with our unconscious. The ancestral power of symbols. Since the first cave paintings, humans have used images to express the invisible. Before inventing writing, we were already drawing suns, animals, and spirals. These were symbols loaded with intention, to invoke the hunt, to ask for protection, to honor the sacred. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung called these universal images archetypes, figures common to all cultures, such as the hero, the mother, the shadow, or the sage. When we visualize, those archetypes are activated without our awareness. To see a mountain is not only to see a massive rock, it is to feel challenge, ascension, effort. Your unconscious has spoken that language all along. In 1960, Japanese psychologist Kazuo Murakami studied why some patients responded better to suggestion-based treatments. He discovered that those who had grown up surrounded by Buddhist symbols, mandalas, statues, lotus flowers, showed greater ability to enter states of deep relaxation. Fascinatingly, many of them were no longer religious, yet the repeated visual contact had etched a channel of response in their unconscious. This tells us that the symbols around you are not neutral. They are keys that open emotional doors. The inner cinema. Think of your mind as a private cinema. Each time you visualize, you project a film. But the script is not always conscious. Often the chosen symbols come from your personal or cultural history. For example, if you imagine abundance as a chest full of coins, you are using an ancient symbol of wealth. But someone else might imagine a fertile field or a tree full of fruit. Both are correct. What matters is that the symbol resonates with you. The key is to learn to consciously choose the symbols that connect you with your deepest desire. Exercise. Your personal symbol. 1. Close your eyes and think of an important goal for yourself. 2. Ask your mind, with what image can I represent it? 3. Let the first thing arise, perhaps a key, an open door, a mountain, a light. 4. Take note. That symbol can become your anchor for visualization. When you use that symbol repeatedly, your unconscious will associate it with your goal and respond more quickly. Images that heal. Dr. Carl Simonton, an American oncologist, was one of the pioneers in using visualization with cancer patients in the 1970s. He asked them to imagine their white blood cells as knights fighting malignant cells. Some patients, skeptical at first, began to report improvements in mood and, in some cases, in physical recovery. The success of the method was not because the drawings were real, but because the mind responded to symbolic language. Seeing the body as an army of light gave hope, and hope strengthened the organism. In Mayan tradition, there existed the symbol of the quetzal, a bird with brilliant green feathers that could never live in captivity. If caged, it died. For the Mayans, it represented absolute freedom. Today in Guatemala, it remains a national symbol and even gives its name to the currency. Imagining a quetzal flying may awaken in you a sense of independence far stronger than simply saying, "I want to be free." That is the power of metaphor. It transforms words into living experiences. The dark side of images. Not all images are allies. There are also symbols that reinforce limitations. If every time you think about the future you see a storm, if your mind repeats scenes of failure, you are using visualization negatively. The problem is not that you visualize, but that you do so unconsciously. The first step to change is observation. What images arise spontaneously when you think about your life? Are they symbols of expansion or of confinement? The good news is that any symbol can be reprogrammed. The storm can become rain that fertilizes. The prison can open its door. Exercise. Rewriting symbols. 1. Identify a recurring negative image, for example, seeing yourself stuck in a tunnel. 2. Imagine how that image transforms. The tunnel now has a bright exit. 3. Repeat the transformed version until it becomes your new reference. This process, simple but profound, re-educates the unconscious with new associations. Polish poet Czesław Miłosz recounted that during the Nazi occupation, he would secretly visualize a lit lamp on a table. For him, that lamp represented the continuity of culture, the light resisting the darkness. Years later, he acknowledged that this simple symbol was what gave him the strength to keep writing amid horror. Sometimes you don't need grand images. A small, persistent symbol is enough to keep your will alive. Music as a sound image. Although we usually think in visual images, visualization can also be auditory. A melody can serve as a symbol of joy, power, or calm. In fact, many ancient peoples used repetitive chants as a way to create inner landscapes. If there is a song that connects you with your goal, use it as a tool. Imagine your objective while listening to that melody, and you will see how the emotion intensifies. Chapter 5. From Daydream to Action. The bridge between the imagined and the lived. To visualize is to ignite a spark, but if that spark doesn't catch the wood, it fades in seconds. The same happens with dreams. Imagining opens the door, but crossing it requires concrete steps. In this chapter, we will explore how to build a bridge between what you imagine and what actually happens. Creative visualization is not an excuse to remain still in fantasy, but a catalyst for action. The trap of daydreaming. You probably know someone who speaks about their projects with enthusiasm, but never brings them to life. They have brilliant ideas, even detailed images of what their life could be like, but the years pass and everything remains just words. This is the trap of daydreaming, confusing imagining with acting. The mind is so powerful that it can generate the same satisfaction as a real achievement. Visualizing a prize, a success, a fulfilled goal can make you feel accomplished, at least for a while. But if you stop there, that fulfillment turns into an empty illusion. The challenge is to use visualization as a motor for action, not as a substitute. In 1904, a young Russian doctor named Ivan Pavlov, before becoming famous for his experiments with dogs, became obsessed with an idea. He wanted to improve how surgeons prepared for delicate operations. Pavlov proposed that before each surgery, doctors should mentally rehearse every step as if they were already in the operating room. Although at first his colleagues mocked him, they soon discovered that those who practiced this invisible rehearsal made fewer mistakes. Pavlov had found a bridge between imagination and action. Visualization was prior training for reality. Emotion plus image plus action equals transformation. The formula for effective visualization has three inseparable components. 1. Clear image, seeing in your mind what you want in detail. 2. Intense emotion, feeling the scene as if it were already real. 3. Coherent action, taking concrete steps, however small, in the direction of the image. Without action, emotion dissipates. Without emotion, the image remains cold. And without image, action loses direction. Exercise, the micro-bridge. Here is a simple exercise to start building the bridge. 1. Visualize a simple goal, like finishing a book you have pending. 2. Imagine the final scene. You close it with satisfaction, remembering what you learned. 3. Feel the emotion of achievement. 4. Ask yourself, what is the smallest step I can take right now to get closer? Perhaps reading just 5 pages today. 5. Do it immediately after the visualization. That minimal step is the first plank of the bridge. Roman engineers, when building their famous bridges, used supporting stones called keystones. These held the entire structure. Visualization is like that keystone. It sustains motivation, but it is not enough by itself. Each stone, each daily action, must be placed for the bridge to be completed. The power of simple rituals. To turn visualization into action, it helps to create rituals that connect both worlds. Some examples. Visualizing your day each morning and then writing down 3 actions that reflect it. Imagining your goal before sleeping and taking a step toward it the next day. Using a symbolic object, a stone, a bracelet, that reminds you of your commitment to act. The ritual functions as a constant reminder that the dream demands embodiment in facts. In the 1980s, Australian coach Terry Orlick worked with Olympic skiers. He discovered that athletes who combined visualization with small physical actions, such as moving their bodies in sync with the imagined scene, performed much better. One of his students recounted that, on the eve of a competition, he got up every hour during the night, assumed position, and visualized the course. He didn't just imagine it, he performed the movements with his body. He won a gold medal. The example shows that the body is a powerful ally in the bridge toward action. When life responds. Something curious happens when you begin to act in coherence with your visualization. Life responds. Not in a magical way, as it is sometimes portrayed, but because your perception changes. If you visualize getting a new job and begin sending resumes, your attention sharpens. You notice ads, overhear conversations, perceive opportunities that previously went unnoticed. Your mind becomes a radar searching for signals related to your desire. What seemed like coincidence is, in reality, your brain trained to detect what is relevant. Exercise, the Bridge Journal. For 1 week, practice the following. 1. Each day, visualize your goal for 5 minutes. 2. Write down in a notebook 1 concrete action for that day. 3. Do it no matter how small it seems. 4. At the end of the week, review your notebook. You will have taken 7 real steps forward. This exercise demonstrates that the bridge is not built all at once, but stone by stone. It is said that Thomas Edison, before sleeping, would hold a metal sphere in his hand while relaxing in his chair. As he drifted into a semi-dream state, the sphere would fall to the floor and wake him up. In that instant, filled with images and ideas, he wrote down what he had visualized. Many of his inventions were born from that bridge between daydream and immediate action. Edison's trick was simple, not letting the image evaporate, but capturing it and giving it form in reality. Chapter 6. The Paradox of Control, Letting Go to Receive. Imagine throwing a seed into the soil. You water it, care for it, watch the ground every day. But if you constantly dig it up to see whether it has sprouted, you'll end up killing it. Something similar happens with visualization. When we control it too much, we block it. In this chapter, we will explore a fascinating paradox. For creative visualization to work, we must let go. This does not mean abandoning, but allowing life to do its part. The desire that suffocates. Sometimes we confuse commitment with obsession. We think that if we repeat the same image over and over again, almost desperately, it will come true. But that anxiety acts as a brake. Instead of attracting, it projects scarcity. The unconscious responds to the emotion that surrounds the image. If you imagine your goal with fear of losing it, what you reinforce is fear, not the goal. Letting go is changing frequency, shifting from anxious need to serene trust. The art of trusting. Letting go is not passivity, but trust. It is like planting a garden. You do your part, planting, watering, tending, and then you allow nature to do its own. If you try to control every drop of rain or every ray of sun, you end up exhausted. To trust is to accept that life has rhythms and forms that do not always align with our plans. Visualization sets the direction, but the path may be unexpected. Exercise. The wish box. Here is a simple ritual to practice letting go. 1. Write a clear and positive wish on a piece of paper. 2. Briefly visualize it as already fulfilled. Feel the emotion. 3. Place the paper in a box or on an altar. 4. Each time anxiety returns, remind yourself, I've already delivered it. My part is done. This symbolic gesture helps train the mind in trust. Polynesian navigators crossed immense oceans without maps or compasses. They used stars and ocean currents, but above all, they trusted the experience passed down through generations. They knew they couldn't control the sea, only learn to flow with it. Visualization is similar. You set your north clearly, but let life move the currents. Letting go is accepting that you don't need to control every wave. The danger of obsession. When we obsess over a result, we risk not seeing other opportunities. Perhaps you visualize a specific job in a certain company, but life offers you a better position elsewhere. If you cling to the first image, you might miss what was truly meant for you. Letting go means being open to life's surprises. The outcome may be different, but often richer than what you expected. In 1978, writer Isabel Allende began a farewell letter to her dying grandfather. She didn't intend to publish it. It was only an intimate act of love. But the letter became her first novel, The House of the Spirits. At that moment, Allende hadn't visualized becoming a famous novelist. She simply released her writing, and life carried it beyond what she had imagined. Sometimes what arises when we stop controlling surpasses our expectations. The balance between action and surrender. Letting go does not mean staying idle. Remember the formula: image plus emotion plus action. Surrender comes after acting. You do what is in your hands and then release the outcome. A good example is preparing for a job interview. You study, rehearse answers, visualize your success. But when the moment comes, you must flow. If you try to control every word, you freeze. If you trust what you've prepared and allow yourself to improvise, you shine. Exercise. The breath of letting go. Try this simple exercise. 1. Inhale deeply while imagining your desire fulfilled. 2. Hold for a few seconds, savoring the emotion. 3. Exhale slowly, imagining you are releasing it to the universe. Repeat 3 times. This physical gesture trains the body in the cycle of receiving and releasing. The mystery of the unexpected. Many people who practice visualization report a curious phenomenon. They achieve what they wanted, but not in the way they had imagined. A student dreams of traveling to Paris, but instead of going as a tourist, he receives a work scholarship. A woman visualizes having a family, and life grants it through adoption rather than biological birth. Letting go allows the desire to arrive in the form that best fits your life, even if it isn't the one you envisioned. Chapter 7. Hidden Codes of the Body and Breath. So far, we've explored visualization as an essentially mental phenomenon, images, symbols, emotions. But there is a silent ally that multiplies its power, the body. Visualization does not happen in a vacuum. Your posture, your breathing, even the rhythm of your heart influence how you imagine and how deeply you connect with your inner world. In this chapter, we will discover the hidden codes the body holds and how to use them to make visualization a more vivid and transformative experience. The body as an antenna. The body is much more than a vehicle for the mind. It is an antenna that amplifies or blocks signals. If you sit slouched, breathing shallowly, your visualization will tend to be weak and scattered. In contrast, if you sit upright, breathe deeply, and relax your muscles, your mind enters a receptive state. Neuroscience confirms this. Posture influences brain chemistry. Being upright increases the feeling of confidence. Slow breathing activates the parasympathetic system, which reduces anxiety and creates space for creative calm. When you practice visualization, your body prepares the ground. In 1975, psychologist Jean Achterberg worked with patients suffering from chronic pain. She discovered that those who practiced relief visualizations had better results when they accompanied them with deep, steady breathing. Patients who only imagined without adjusting their breath improved less. Achterberg concluded that the body is not a passive spectator, but an active participant in the process. Breathing in a certain way was like giving background music to the images. The rhythm of breath. Each breath is a message to the brain. Inhaling activates, exhaling relaxes. When you prolong the exhalation, you enter a state conducive to clear visualization. A simple exercise. 1. Sit comfortably, close your eyes. 2. Inhale to the count of 4. 3. Exhale to the count of 6. 4. Repeat several times, allowing your body to settle. In just a few minutes, you will feel how your inner screen becomes sharper. The power of posture. Buddhist tradition insists on meditating with a straight back. This is not arbitrary. An aligned spine allows the breath to flow and attention to remain steady without effort. In contrast, if you visualize while lying down without energy, you risk falling asleep or losing intensity. Your body constantly sends signals to the mind. Being upright tells it, "I am awake and available." In Japanese culture, there is the concept of seiza, sitting on the knees with the back straight. It is considered a posture of dignity and presence. Practicing visualization in a similar position, whether seated on a chair or on the floor, sends a clear message. You are honoring your practice as if welcoming an important guest. The guest is yourself, your deeper mind, the heart as a metronome. Recent research on heart coherence shows that when breathing synchronizes with the heartbeat, the body enters an optimal state for creativity and well-being. Imagine visualizing your goal while breathing to the rhythm of your heart. It is like aligning your entire biology with your intention. Exercise, anchoring breath. 1. Place your hand on your chest, feel your heartbeat. 2. Inhale gently while counting 3 beats. 3. Exhale while counting 5. 4. As you breathe, visualize a scene of calm and success. This simple anchor unites image, emotion, and body in one flow. Violinist Yehudi Menuhin often practiced visualization before concerts, but he had a peculiar detail. While imagining each note, he accompanied the visualization with long breaths and finger movements, as if playing silently. Years later, he confessed that without this body-breath combination, the images would fade away. His success as a performer demonstrates that imagination blossoms more fully when the body is involved. The body as metaphor. You don't need complex postures to integrate the body into your practice. Sometimes a simple symbolic gesture is enough. If you visualize opening new opportunities, you can open your hands during the practice. If you imagine releasing fears, exhale strongly and let your arms drop. Gestures reinforce the message. Your unconscious understands a movement faster than a rational explanation. We must not forget that the body also stores tensions, traumas, or habits that limit visualization. If your chest is contracted from stress, it will be harder to imagine expansion. If you clench your jaw, your mind will tend to produce tense images. That is why it is useful to do a brief body scan before visualizing. Relax the shoulders, release the abdomen, soften the face. A liberated body becomes a clean screen for projection. Exercise, relaxing scan. 1. Lie down or sit comfortably. 2. Mentally travel through your body from feet to head. 3. In each area, breathe and silently say, release. 4. When finished, begin your visualization. You will notice how the mind flows with fewer interruptions. Ancient yogis compared the breath to a horse and the mind to its rider. If the horse is restless, the rider cannot guide it. If you calm it gently, the journey becomes pleasant. Visualization is that journey. The horse is your breath. Taming it calmly is the key to reaching the destination. Chapter 8. Collective Power, Visualizing in Groups. Visualization is often practiced in silence, with closed eyes and in solitude. Yet when several people align their minds in the same direction, something surprising happens. The energy amplifies. It is as if each mind were a musical instrument, and by playing together, they formed an invisible orchestra. In this chapter, we will explore how collective visualization enhances results, what science has to say about it, and how different cultures have used the power of imagining together for centuries. The mind as a shared field. Social psychologists have shown that emotions are contagious. It only takes one person laughing in a room for others to feel the urge to laugh. This phenomenon, known as emotional synchrony, also occurs with inner images. When a group concentrates on the same visualization, each member reinforces the experience of the others. It is not mere suggestion. Neuroscience studies show that brains tend to synchronize their electrical activity when they share a common task. Visualizing in a group creates a shared mental field where each mind adds its strength. In 1987, an experiment led by physicist John Hagelin brought together more than 7,000 people in different cities to practice meditation and peace visualizations. According to reports, during the days of the experiment, statistically significant decreases in violence rates were recorded in the observed areas. Although the study was criticized by some, it opened an interesting debate. Can a focused group influence the collective atmosphere? The results suggest yes. The circle as a symbol. Since ancient times, human groups have gathered in circles to share visions. The circle has no hierarchies. Everyone sees each other. Everyone participates. In African tribes and Native American communities, councils are held in circles because it symbolizes unity and endless energy. When a group visualizes in a circle, the experience intensifies. Each person feels supported by the others, and trust increases. Exercise. Paired visualization. If you have someone to practice with, try this simple exercise. 1. Sit facing each other, close your eyes. 2. Agree on a shared goal, for example, send in calm energy to both. 3. Visualize together a light surrounding you. 4. At the end, share aloud what you felt. This exchange strengthens the connection and multiplies the sense of reality. In the Middle Ages, cathedral builders worked for decades on projects they would never see completed. Each stone laid was part of a collective work guided by a common vision to raise a temple. While none could achieve it alone, together they made it possible. Collective visualization works in the same way. Each person contributes a stone to the mental edifice. The sum creates something greater than the parts. The power of shared intention. Researcher Lynn McTaggart documented in her book The Intention Experiment how dispersed groups of volunteers, focusing on the same intention, produced measurable changes in plants, water, and even healing processes. Beyond the scientific controversy, what is interesting is that participants reported personal benefits, more peace, clarity, and a sense of connection. Visualizing together not only affects the environment, but transforms each member of the group. In 1971, during confinement in an Ohio prison, a group of inmates began meeting secretly to practice visualizations of freedom. They did not imagine escapes, but scenes of a dignified life outside prison. Years later, several of them recounted having found unexpected paths to reintegration, scholarships, stable jobs, family reconciliations. What was surprising is that they themselves attributed those changes to the invisible circle they had created in prison. How to organize a collective visualization. 1. Define the intention, clear, positive, and in the present. Example, we visualize a peaceful neighborhood. 2. Synchronize the practice. Agree on a time, in person or at a distance. 3. Unify the image. Use the same symbol or scene for all. 4. Share afterward. Expressing experiences reinforces the connection. The key is not perfection, but sincere union. The risks of the collective. Not everything done in groups is positive. If a group focuses on negative images, it can also reinforce fear and hostility. Wars do not begin only with weapons, but with collective visualizations of enemies, threats, and destruction. That is why, when practicing in a group, it is essential to care for the quality of the intention. The collective unconscious also responds to what is sown. Exercise. The wheel of gratitude. A powerful group practice consists of each person visualizing something they are grateful for and then sharing it. As you listen to the images of others, your mind fills with positive symbols you would not have imagined alone. It is like expanding your inner library with the visions of others. Chapter 9. Shadows and Traps of Imagination. Up to this point, we have explored creative visualization as a powerful tool for transforming life. But like any tool, it also has a hidden edge. It can build, or it can enslave. It is not enough to imagine. We must pay attention to the images we nurture, the emotions they reinforce, and the mental traps that hide behind them. In this chapter, we will dive into those shadows of imagination, self-deception, limiting beliefs, and paralyzing fantasies. Because learning to visualize is not only about projecting light, it also means recognizing the darkness we project without realizing it. The shadow of rigid expectation. One of the most common dangers is confusing visualization with a fixed contract with life. We imagine an exact result and expect it to happen exactly as we decided, in the time and form we dictated. When it doesn't happen, we feel frustrated and think, this doesn't work. The trap lies in forgetting that visualization is a guide, not a guarantee. If we use it as an imposition, we end up imprisoned by our own images. In 1920, British explorer Percy Fawcett became obsessed with the idea of a lost city in the Amazon, which he called Z. He constantly visualized his discovery, convinced he was destined to find it. His conviction was so strong that he ignored warnings, maps, and evidence that contradicted his plans. In 1925, he disappeared in the jungle along with his expedition. Fawcett was a victim of one of the shadows of visualization, the rigid obsession that blinds us to reality. His dream may have inspired, but it also led him to his downfall. The trap of self-deception. Another frequent shadow is using visualization as an escape. We imagine a perfect life to avoid facing real problems. Instead of motivating us to act, the images become an illusory refuge. This happens, for example, when someone visualizes health but maintains destructive habits, or when they imagine abundance but avoid making financial decisions. Visualization stops being a bridge and turns into a smoke curtain. Exercise, the honest mirror. To avoid self-deception, try this exercise. 1. Visualize your goal clearly. 2. Make a list of the concrete actions that would support that vision. 3. Review. Are you doing any of them? 4. If not, ask yourself what you are afraid to face. This exercise forces you to align your images with reality, the trap of fear in disguise. The unconscious also visualizes without our control. Every repeated worry is a form of negative visualization. You see accidents, failures, illnesses, and your body responds with real anxiety. The danger is that you end up reinforcing what you fear more than what you desire. As an African proverb says, "The hunter who always imagines the beast ends up running even when he is alone in the forest." In medieval alchemy, it was said that every metal had a shadow of lead that needed to be purified to reach gold. Imagination works the same way. It is not enough to project gold. We must recognize and transform the inner lead, our fears, limiting beliefs, and dark symbols. The shadow does not disappear by denying it. It only changes when we face it directly. The trap of inherited beliefs. Many of our visualizations are not our own. They are cultural or family inheritances. Maybe you imagine success as a luxury car because you saw it in ads all your life. Or you picture love as scenes from romantic movies. The problem is that those symbols may not resonate with you. If your desire is not genuine, visualization loses strength. The unconscious can tell when you are trying to plant a seed that is not yours. How to transform traps into allies. 1. Recognize the shadow. Notice what negative or foreign images arise frequently. 2. Name them. Giving them a name removes their power. This is fear, not prophecy. 3. Rewrite the image. Transform the dark symbol into a luminous one. 4. Act in coherence. Show through your actions that you are choosing another path. The shadow is not an enemy, it is a teacher. It shows you where you need to work. Exercise, the inverse laboratory. Dedicate a day to consciously visualizing your fears. Imagine the worst situation. Observe it without running away. Then, transform that image. From the dark tunnel to the illuminated exit. From the storm to the rain that nourishes. This inverse laboratory turns the shadow into creative energy. The danger of dependency. Another trap is believing that visualization solves everything. Some people turn it into a dogma. If what they visualize doesn't happen, they blame themselves, thinking they didn't do it well enough. Visualization is powerful, but not omnipotent. It does not control chance, nature, or the decisions of others. It is a tool, not a magic wand. To use it with maturity means to also accept uncertainty. Chapter 10. A Life as a Work of Art. Imagine for a moment that your life is a canvas. Each day you paint on it with your thoughts, emotions, and actions. Sometimes you use bright colors, other times darker tones, and occasionally you leave blank spaces. The art of creative visualization is not only about filling that canvas with beautiful images, but about learning to paint it with awareness, until your entire life becomes a unique, unrepeatable, and deeply personal masterpiece. In this final chapter, we are going to integrate everything we have learned. Imagination as an invisible doorway, scientific support, the conscious design of desires, the secret language of symbols, the bridge to action, the art of letting go, the strength of the body, the power of the collective, and the recognition of shadows. Now it is time to look at the complete picture, visualization as a daily philosophy. Practicing visualization does not have to be an isolated ritual in a quiet corner, though that helps. It can become a habit woven into daily life, imagining with intention while walking, while cooking, while preparing to sleep. It is not about forcing images all the time, but about cultivating an attitude, seeing beyond the obvious. When you face a problem, instead of staying on the surface, you can visualize possible solutions. When something inspires you, you can transform it into a symbol and keep it as a resource. Well-practiced creative visualization becomes a way of being in the world. Russian painter Vasily Kandinsky once said that one evening, at twilight, he saw a painting leaning on its side without a signature. He didn't recognize it as his own and thought it was the work of a genius of abstraction. That accidental vision pushed him to abandon figurative painting and become a pioneer of abstract art. Kandinsky didn't plan that revelation. It was an unexpected image that showed him a new path. That is how life works when we know how to look. Each moment can be a spontaneous visualization that redirects us. The art of integration. Throughout this journey, we have seen that visualization has multiple ingredients. Image, what you see within yourself. Emotion, the energy that makes it real. Body, the antenna that amplifies the experience. Action, the bridge to concrete life. Trust, the ability to let go. Collective, the strength of joining with others. Shadow, the obstacles that become allies. Integrating all this is like mixing colors on a palette. The more conscious you are, the more shades your work will have. Exercise, the mural of your life. I propose a final exercise to turn your practice into an art. 1. Take a notebook or a large sheet of paper. 2. Divide the space into 7 sections, one for each ingredient on the list above. 3. In each section, draw, write, or paste images that represent your way of integrating that aspect. 4. Place your mural somewhere visible. This mural is not decoration. It is a constant reminder that your life is a work in progress. In the Renaissance, sculptors said they did not create a statue, but rather freed it from the stone. Michelangelo claimed that David was already inside the block of marble, and his task was simply to remove what was unnecessary. Your life works the same way. Within you already lies the masterpiece. Visualization is not about inventing from nothing, but about removing layers of fear, doubt, and distraction until what you are shines in its most authentic form. Gratitude as the final brushstroke. A key element for integrating visualization as an art of life is gratitude, not as a moral obligation, but as a state of perception. Gratitude is not just saying thank you, but recognizing what you already have as part of the canvas. When you practice gratitude, your mind opens to more images of abundance. It is like illuminating the colors you have already painted, so you can see them more clearly. Nikola Tesla, the visionary inventor, said that all his projects began in the mind. First, I build them in my imagination. I make them run there. When they seem perfect, only then do I move to the real. What is curious is that Tesla also cultivated gratitude. Every night before sleeping, he recalled 3 good things from the day and visualized them as sparks of energy that accompanied him. That habit helped him maintain confidence in the midst of adversity, from creator to creature. There is a beautiful paradox in all this. When you visualize, you are the creator of your life. But at the same time, you are also the creature of something greater: life, mystery, existence itself. The art lies in dancing between both roles, painting with your own hand and accepting the unexpected strokes that the universe adds. When you achieve that balance, your work becomes alive, dynamic, surprising. Exercise, the day as a canvas. Every morning before getting up, visualize your day as a blank canvas. Ask yourself, what colors do I want to put on today? Perhaps a red of enthusiasm, a blue of calm, a yellow of joy. At the end of the day, review your canvas mentally. What colors actually appeared? It is not about judging, but about observing. Little by little, you will discover that you have more power than you think to choose the tones of your life. The legacy you leave. We are all leaving traces, even if we are not aware of them. The way you imagine your life influences how you live it, and the way you live affects those around you. Your work does not remain only on your canvas. It inspires, spreads, and transforms others. You may not notice, but someone may be watching your way of living as if it were a painting in a gallery. What do you want to transmit? As we arrive here, I want to leave you with one certainty. You are the artist of your existence. Your past, your limitations, your fears do not matter. Within you, there is an inexhaustible power to imagine, feel, act, and transform. Creative visualization is not magic in the trivial sense, but it is magic in the deepest sense. It turns the invisible into visible, the intangible into tangible, the possible into real. So each time you close your eyes, remember, you are not escaping from the world, you are creating a new one. And every image you cultivate is another brushstroke in the most important work of art you will ever create, your life.